So, if you've never heard of The Big Les Show, The Big Les Show is a web series made by Jared Wright, originally on Microsoft Paint. The show is set in the town of Browntown, Australia, happening over 4 seasons with multiple spin-off shows. It features the story of Leslie Mackerel and his adventures with his friends, using drugs and crude humour as a comedic standpoint, with a lot of violence as well. However, some of these mentioned drug usages have caused key moments, incredibly delving deep into psychological thoughts and inner peace within our own selves. But, does this make the narrative important? A piece of key evidence supporting my theory is Tumor Island 2, the season 3 finale of The Big Les Show, with Sassy the Sasquatch, an omniscient Sasquatch being, talking to Les during a drug trip. And there's some important quotes Sassy says to Les. One of them being, "So you smoked the joint, mate?" And after that, "But it was your decision to smoke it." Now, that kind of says to me, and to an audience, that it's a decision kind of making thing. To have a standpoint and try and get into these theories of like psychological and more spiritual awakenings, you need to make that decision and do the change. Another one says, "You aren't dead, you're more than alive," which I think links slightly to the Hinduism belief of a Kundalini awakening. And yeah, I was supporting Jared Wright at the time, who was going through a bit of a tough patch apparently, and he actually had a Kundalini awakening, so very interesting. Another really good quote, another 2 good quotes actually, is "You and me, the same voice," obviously linking to Jared Wright, the voice actor for both characters and the creator of The Big Les Show, and Microsoft Paint, linking to the fact that the first 2 seasons were made on Microsoft Paint. So it's a bit of like a thing where the characters do link heavily to Jared Wright, meaning that Jared Wright's life kind of links a bit to the narrative of the show over time. Some really other good quotes are, "Right now, you're outside the box, but also in the box at the same time. And like when an animal is born in captivity and grows up in a zoo, that animal is completely unaware of a whole other world out there beyond the fence." Now, that just seems like just some kind of like, oh, these come some spiritual, quotes, but really have quite a deep meaning. With that second quote, with the animal in captivity quote, it kind of links to not knowing what else is out there if you're kind of stuck in this box of just being kind of like not thinking much about your life. It's very interesting, I believe. And I've seen a few videos, one of them by Harryfromends, I'll link that in the description, of apparently Jared Wright was saying at the time, as himself in Big Les and Tumor Island 2, he was using Sassy as a way to get him through quite a tough patch in life. So it really, like, the show really does have a massive emotional impact on, well, the creator. Another thing that supports this theory is Tumor Island 3, the actual finale of the whole Big Les Show, completing Les' story, with Les being Jared saying goodbye to his adolescence, which is really deep and quite a hard thing to say goodbye to, because it's kind of like Jared's grown up with Les. Les is kind of being that part of his life, and he has to say goodbye to kind of the fun he's had in his adolescence. And yeah, obviously in the finale, Les is kind of sticking to his role of being a hero. He saves all the characters, right? Where he saves his son Quentin, and also that links slightly to props character types. And yeah, apparently, according to Harryfromends' videos, apparently what he's quoted as, "Jared didn't see the Big Les Show as some big thing at the time, actually at the start of it, and apparently it felt like a laugh between mates. But it's changed something which has become something that has changed so many lives for the better, including me, obviously from Harry Anderson again. And apparently it's not just a show, this is a whole spiritual fucking awakening," as this quote from some guy on Facebook was. With a few others on Facebook being, "So glad I discovered the Big Les universe. I binge everything almost weekly. It's like therapy." This is weird to think about, a stoner comedy being so empowering among an audience. It's amazing, really, to bring this kind of community of people who just need that in life. It's amazing. Looking more at kind of the narrative side of things instead of the actual importance of narrative, we're looking at the structure more now. And I want to mention Todorow's 5-act structure, which is a belief that a structure of a story can be split into equilibrium, disruption, recognition, attempt to repair damage, and new equilibrium. This fits all 4 seasons of Big Les, but in an overarching story, it fits a bit like this. So equilibrium being Les and Norton's fights, disruption being Mike Nolan disappearing, and Donny, Les, and Sassy accidentally find him. The recognition being Les consuming a tripper snipper, being a concoction of ingredients by Sassy, causing him to go for an 11-day drugs trip. A few more things occur. Les goes to prison and stuff like that. But a key thing which happens is Les, at the end of season 2, finds out his father is the antagonist and is behind all this chaos he's having to go through. So, we start season 3, and we see a few kind of filler episodes, but they're kind of delving deeper into a few more characters. But the attempt, the recognition's, the attempt to repair damage is Les needing to return to Tumor Island after a drug trip on heroin cookies to destroy the hive. They obviously do that, and what occurs is they destroy the hive, and then a few months later, a bunch of tumors come to the town of Browntown and invade, which leads to Les having to sacrifice himself to kill his father, which you could say is the attempt to repair damage again still. And then find a new equilibrium. It is Donny and Sassy returning from a 13-month drug trip, I believe, to find peace in Browntown, and that Les is dead. It's pretty deep. We can also suggest that you get characters. They can fit into binary opposites, which link slightly to the narrative. You've got Les and Norton. They're both brothers, but if you look at them, Norton's got an orange and red house. Les has got a beige house. Norton's very feminine. Les is very masculine. They both have, obviously, Les has a masculine voice. Norton has a much more feminine voice. Does much more feminine activities. Les is very violent. But they still share few similarities. But this is when we get to Clarence and Mike Nolan. Right. Clarence, very, very timid, shy, scared. Doesn't like to do much violence and harm. Mike Nolan, on the other hand, chaotic. You can say he's acts crazy even, where he's actually a bit overly violent. But I think this does link to the overarching story heavily. There's a lot of uses of like actual narrative devices, such as foreshadowing with Les's karma in Tumor Island 2. There's cliffhangers like Cecil the Sasquatch, the bad Sasquatch, the only bad Sasquatch in the whole show, being seen at the end of Tumor Island 2. Author surrogate, as I mentioned in the last point, of Les is Jared's adolescent self, which is also from... I've got quite a bit of information from Harryfromends' few videos he's made on Big Les, which, thank you. This plot twist with Les killing Norton and Les being killed by his own gun he used on Norton, which kind of links that idea of karma as well, which was mentioned in that foreshadowing quite a bit. Now, I've got one more point to mention, and that is on the other hand. You see, the Big Les show, despite it being quite philosophical and having quite a bit of structure behind it, it is incredibly violent sometimes. Like I said earlier with Mike Nolan being acts crazy, kind of. But even though you think, okay, violence is there for humour, it does actually have a reason. For example, it does have a story. It has a main, story arc it is involved in. The primary use of violence in fiction is as a plot device to intensify it, like using a spice, which is obviously Les killing Norton. Also, the violence can move the story along a bit, which is the whole gang killing tumors. If the tumors attacked them, it would cause just the whole story to be done within like 2 episodes. It'd be boring. The all lost moment. It's not, the all lost moment, which is like, oh no, they've got nothing left. It's not seen much, but you can see it with the final episode of Big Les, where Les is impaled and dies, and you see his dead body rotten, and you think, oh, like this is over. Les has died. But so it kind of is kind of like, oh, do you think all's gone? Like it makes the audience feel a lot more intense. I think the violence can be used to communicate the stakes a bit as well. with that random guy who keeps showing up in, I don't know what he's even called. I don't know if anyone knows what he's called. It's a random guy who keeps getting harmed loads and like throwing up everywhere. He's in Tumor Island 1. We obviously, when we see Les land on Tumor Island in Tumor Island 1, we see this guy get ripped apart, and it kind of intensifies the moment and makes the viewer or the audience think, oh wow, like something could happen to Les or the gang. Violence can just be fun. Without the violence, the Big Les show would just be a bunch of guys and drugs just sitting there. It'd be a bit boring. But also, violence when you've seen is like a bit of a release. I think it's called Hypothesis Caphaurus. I butchered the pronunciation of that so badly, probably. But a lot of characters are not bound by social conventions. If someone is preventing them from achieving their goal, they are free to do them bodily harm. So viewers may see the overly aggressive killing and brutality as a way to let off kind of some steam and kind of make them think, oh, you know what, this is like interesting, this is funny to see these like, annoying, massive yellow, like Homer Simpson tumours be murdered. And it kind of makes you think, oh, that's funny, but it kind of isn't making the viewer, aggressive and stuff. I may be going a bit too much into audience theories here a bit, but I think it's important that we discuss this as part of the narrative, because obviously violence is mentioned and seen a lot in the Big Les, but even in the spin-off shows it's seen quite a bit. Finally, I just want to mention the Big Les show's evolved to have a much more bigger impact than it originally planned to have, and has become a lot more serious over time, with deeper themes covered, such as I mentioned earlier, more kind of psychological ideas, and it does go quite deep. I'm not probably describing it as well as it could be, but it's really important. Like, if you actually see some people's theories and ideas on Big Les, it really is like it's big in their life. It's changed their life massively, and I can agree slightly. And I like how it still keeps this optimum equilibrium where it's not like overly violent and it's not overly philosophical, and it's this nice in between where you can watch it and be like, this is like nice to watch. It's not overly violent, it's not overly philosophical, it's an easy watch. It's a stoner comedy. It fits that perfectly. Another thing you can say, which might oppose to what I've said, is filler episodes I mentioned earlier in season 3. Are they necessary? It does slow the story down massively. But on the other hand, you could mention it expands on a lot of characters and make you more interested in associate with other characters. For example, I think Donny's an awesome guy. I love Donny. Some people could say that Big Les show accidentally got narrative and it never purposely had one, which I think is rubbish because, like I've said, there's so many narrative devices. I've missed a few out even. If I mention all of them, I'd be here for hours. It's so many narrative devices and it has such a deeper meaning. I think it actually has a purpose. I think it is definitely got that important narrative and fits a lot of narrative theory as well. Some also I didn't mention as well because I'd be going for hours. And personally, in my opinion, the show's evolved to become a piece of media that shared people's views and beliefs. The show grew with Jared and many viewers and ends with the ultimate send-off for Les, with the finale of season 3 and 4 being a 9.7, 9.8 respectively on IMDb. That is pretty crazy. That if you think that a stoner comedy about violence and drugs got a 9.7, 9.8 on IMDb, it could be slightly biased, but still, that's mental. It has to have something deeper, and I think it's just because they never touch on too deep of a motive. I think it makes it quite enjoyable to watch. But anyways, thank you for watching. Sorry for my waffle. I'll link at any form of links or evidence I use in the description, and yeah, goodbye.